Labor will go into the election this year armed with a capital gains tax and a higher top tax rate. Labor says they'll enable New Zealanders to own their own future, but critics say the package is an attack on personal achievement and success. I'm joined now by PricewaterhouseCoopers Chairman John Shewan. Good morning.
Good morning.
Overall, as a tax package policy, what do you think of Labor's plans?
Well, as a member of the tax working group, I'm really disappointed at the overall package. There's two distinct parts, obviously. There is the income tax side, and on that score, I'd give it about a 3 out of 10. I think it turns the New Zealand tax system into a camel, and how badly affected you are depends on what side of the hump you're on a particular day. The capital gains tax has pros and cons. I think the overall regime they're proposing is extraordinarily complex, but I do accept that in theory there is a justification for the CGT, but as an overall package, no, I rate it as a very poor piece of work.
OK, Phil Goff says, though, that the majority of New Zealanders will benefit. Will they?
Well, no, I think whether the majority of New Zealanders will benefit will depend on the impact of this overall package on growth, efficiency, fairness, coherence. That's the framework that the tax working group developed to measure tax systems by. Now, they have gone in the direct opposite direction on 8 of our 13 recommendations. So I think it's bad for growth, and I think it'll be bad for the economy. Particular individuals will be better or worse off, but we should rise above that and say, what's the way of growing this cake? We want more people earning more across the board, and I don't think this tax package will achieve that.
OK, John Key says capital gains tax is complex and hard to implement. That's been poo-pooed by economists and tax experts, but Phil Goff's version does seem a little complex. It applies to farmland, but not the farmhouse and the section it sits on. It won't apply to Canterbury for 5 years. How straightforward is this policy, or isn't it?
Well, I think any capital gains tax is complex, there's no doubt. This one is more complex than most because, very surprisingly, Labor is proposing that there be a special rate of 15%. So that means we've got a special new tax, and that will encourage people to convert income into capital. That's a grave mistake, and I think they need to pull back from that. There's also all these exemptions and carve-outs, and it's OK owning a lifestyle block for some reason, but it's not OK to own shares in CGT terms. So it is extremely complex. Let me say, it'll be very good for my business, but I don't think that's what we want. I think if we're going to have a capital gains tax, we need it actually broader. And the big problem with capital gains taxes is that if you exclude owner-occupied homes, that's 2/3 of all properties. That's sending all the wrong signals and won't achieve the objectives that are set down for it.
Nonetheless, the Australians, the Brits, the Americans, they've all managed to pull off a capital gains tax system. Why has it taken us till now to even mention it, and why is it going to be so complex in New Zealand?
Well, let's be clear, we already have a capital gains tax in a number of areas. There's a lot of nonsense been spoken. We actually tax a lot of capital gains more than other countries, such as financial arrangements and so on. Point one. Point two, it's taken so long because, quite rightly, Inland Revenue and others have said we have to be sure that we're going to get a net benefit out of such a tax. And their concern, which I share, is that actually if we exclude a large number of capital assets, as is proposed, it's unlikely to achieve the goal. You know, this suggestion that it will reduce housing prices is really a nonsense. It's like saying if we impose a carbon tax on 1/3 of motorists, we'll solve climate change. I mean, yeah, right, that's material for a TUI ad. It just doesn't stack up.
Phil Goff says, though, over time it's going to generate in the billions over, 10, 15 years. If it's put in place and it works, is it not a reliable form of revenue for the government, though?
Over time it will produce significant revenue, 5 years out, 8 years out, yes, but it will be quite a volatile form of revenue, and governments have to be very careful not to rely excessively on it. So I'm not opposed to a capital gains tax per se, but I think as New Zealanders we need to understand what we're getting ourselves into, which is a very selective capital gains tax which will only apply to a particular group of people. That, I think, is bad tax design, and I think other countries would not support that either.
OK, John Shewan from PricewaterhouseCoopers, thank you so much for your analysis this morning.